think Syd had a big influence on me, but he had a big influence on everybody. Just because he was so boisterous, he was larger than life.
He was extremely good looking. He was probably shy and a bit retiring, but he had a charisma. You had to look at him. If you lined a bunch of guys up, he'd be someone who'd stand out. You'd look and think, he's interesting, he looks different, there's just something about him.
There was this mystery man who strolled around with an acoustic guitar, and he sort of what I describe as his charismatic figure.
Oh, he was just a very beautiful, lovely young guy when he was in Cambridge. Just very sad that the alternative culture did his head in.
No one would forget meeting Syd for the first time. He was this totally different person from, well, we wouldn't say from another planet, but I always described him as rather like a Spanish gypsy, which I've obviously seen from the films. He was like something you only saw in movies, really.
I knew him when he was very beautiful, very young, in Cambridge, through all being of a sort of same age.
Yes, I knew him well enough to go around his house. I saw him every day, like you see your mum and dad every day, so it's like a family growing. I always remember having a great time with Syd. He was always very up.
Towards the end of 1961, the sort of Christmas, 61 into 62, because we were both headed for the art school. I think we both assumed we would get onto the foundation course. So we sort of seen each other in the town, and we attended a Saturday morning art class at Homerton College, which was opposite where he lived. So we got to know each other.
I first met Syd Barrett probably late '64. The band had been going since '63, just about the end of '63. We had three or four guys who were always there, but we all somehow seemed to lose the bass player. I don't know why, whether they couldn't be bothered or they had other projects or they were poached by other bands. Steve then came and said, look, I'm at an art college with this guy called Syd Barrett, and he's sort of fairly keen, wants to really play in a band. He's basically just sort of strumming at the moment, and he has sort of, you know, a desire to be in a band and see what it's like to be part of it. And I thought, you know, let's bring him along, and he'll get up, play bass guitar and help with the vocals. And so that was when sort of probably late '64 when I met Syd for the first time.
First went to arts because I was at the art school nearly 2 years, and I was with the band called Horror and Blues that sort of became Those Without, a different lineup of people. And then Syd Barrett joined Those Without sort of halfway through its lifetime. So the band existed, and then Syd joined. It was his first proper band.
Obviously I wasn't aware of the painting side of him being at art college with Steve. I wasn't even aware of Steve's capability as an artist, but it's only later I've learned and looked back on his life and actually think that he'd have been a better artist than he was a musician.
When Syd was worse than me, he would stand and argue with his tutors if he was asked to do something. say, why? What's the point? Why do I have to draw this plant? I don't want to draw a plant. I want to paint a picture. And he'd stand and argue.
I remember him being quite obstinate. He wouldn't always do as he was told, and he was very rebellious, and could react to some of the tutors in quite an extreme way, where he would storm out of lectures shouting, and which was a side of him that was rather embarrassing at times. You know, you felt that I hadn't seen really behaviour of that quality, really.
I think Syd was sort of quite independent. I'm not sure whether there was complexities in his mind or things that, he was actually mentally challenging or wanted changing. I just saw him as a really nice guy and very affable that, wanted to paint, wanted to play music, and he was quite sort of charming, and everyone seemed to like him.
He was very entertaining. We used to, at break time, we used to go down to a common room which was in the basement cellar. One day we were down in this basement common room, and Syd came bouncing in, and he said, "I've got the name for and it was a group, and it was going to be Pink Floyd." And so the name that particular day and what he said sort of stuck in the brain.
So Those Without was really the only band Syd played with before he went to London and joined the Floyd. So it was all down to us.
I got to Camberwell, and I was in the dinner queue one day at the canteen, and Syd's tutor came up and spoke to me, and he said, "Do you know Syd Barrett, don't you?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Do you know any reason why he isn't coming into college? Because if he doesn't, shape up, he's not going to get his degree." And I said, "Well, I'm not sure," but I said he's in a pop group, and they're getting a bit famous now. They've just had a record, and I said maybe that's why he hasn't been coming in to paint. And obviously that's what was happening, but I didn't want to get him into trouble, so I was trying to be a bit sort of diffident about what was happening.
One thing that I'm quite sort of look back and quite amuses me in a way is thinking that at the end of the evening, when I used to sort of, wherever we were playing, I used to go out and get the money, and whether it's 50, 60, 70 pound, I can't really remember, and then splitting the rest between us. And somehow now thinking of going up to, Syd Barrett and saying, "Here's your £5 for the evening, here's your £10 for the evening." Seems quite, really funny now to look back and, when you think of the millions that have been generated through what was, about to happen. But, yeah.
I think that Syd, by that time, he was living in London somewhere off the Charing Cross Road, somewhere around there, I think. and I did go there once or twice to visit, but I wasn't a close friend, and I think there was some drugs or something going on that I was a bit nervous about. So
he probably wasn't strong enough to resist temptations that were put in his way by people who were maybe they were strong enough to pull themselves out of the sort of the brink of certain aspects of life that were going to sort of threaten their future.
I think his mind just got completely befuddled and didn't quite know what it was doing.
There's a very striking picture that has 5 of them. He's been thrust to the back. He's like sort of just a face in the back. So you see it. It's very sad looking at that photo if you know the whole story, that yes, he's being pushed to the back until finally he isn't there. But I don't think he was aware that that was happening. Otherwise, if you were sort of normal, you'd put up a struggle, a fight, or saying I'm part of this band, or you know, I have a right, I'm a founder. I mean, he just let it happen. I think things had got that bad, so I can understand from the band's point of view that he did nothing about it, or couldn't do anything about it, or maybe he was unaware of all this, what was happening.
I mean, I saw him once and said hello, and he just walked straight past me in the town in 1966, maybe, or maybe it was early 70s. I can't remember, but no, I never communicated with him again.
When he came back to Cambridge, and he was very reclusive. I think one of the last times I saw him was in the pub on Mill Road called the Locomotive. And he was just sitting there, and it just didn't feel appropriate to go and say anything to him, because it just didn't look as if he would appreciate it. He seemed to be quite enjoying his sort of solitude.
Syd had been back in Cambridge from the late 70s, living off Cherrington Road. No one wanted to bother him or intrude on his privacy. There was no reason to. I mean, we actually didn't look at him as Syd Barrett, the famous pop star, the founder of Pink Floyd. You know, we just knew him as Roger Barrett or Syd Barrett, just a guy from the 60s who was like the rest of us, no different, no bigger, no worse, and was just a young man, you know, entering into adult life and just enjoying dealing with what was around him. So, you know, he was a friend. We didn't see him like other people see him from the outside, you know, sort of as a great musical idol.